going to get started here. And while our next presenter is joining us, we have Elizabeth Greene. Hi, Elizabeth. Thank you for joining us. Elizabeth, a little bit about her, is the Director of Global Learning and Development for Semiconductor, where she manages the learning strategy for an employee base of 34,000 employees across 74 sites, focusing on leadership and professional development, compliance and ethics training, career ladders, new employee onboarding, and creating strategic learning partnerships across the country. So she's very busy. As a purpose-driven, passionate, and innovative talent champion, she has devoted her career to creating and executing inclusion-centric employee learning experiences, implementing transformational talent initiatives, and learning strategies that support the acceleration of talent to drive sustainable results. She is passionate about instilling, fostering, and growing a productive, highly engaged, diverse, and inclusive workforce. And one more thing, with 6-year-old twin boys schooling from home most of the year, there's always a high chance of a surprise entrance. So cute tidbit, Elizabeth, I love it. And Elizabeth is going to be addressing diversity in the workforce, becoming a truly inclusive and equitable learning organization. So I will now pass the virtual mic over to Elizabeth and have you get started. Oh, thank you for sharing your screen.
Thank you. Yes. Thanks, Charlene. I really appreciate the introduction. And I'm in the office today, so my twins don't accidentally walk into the room. So
wonderful.
Yeah, I am excited about this. This is a topic that I am very passionate about. So I want to preface this by stating L&D is one piece of the puzzle in creating a truly equitable and inclusive work environment. So we need to be supported by the culture efforts, the mindsets and processes. So we need to be making sure that employees feel that they belong, have equitable access to opportunities, and can bring their true selves to work. So I'm going to focus on the L&D piece with the broader understanding that this is one part of a very complex company strategy and DEI ecosystem. So there's a few things happening in the world that are really bringing to light the importance of this topic. I will talk quickly about 4 key themes. I know there's a million more out there, and discuss how L&D wraps into them in setting a learning culture inside an organization that focuses on inclusive and equitable elements. So I'll not go into detail, a lot of detail on these themes. I'm just setting the context here. We know that the labor market is shrinking. So we've got our baby boomers retiring at twice the rate of last year. 40% of eligible workforce choosing not to work for a variety of reasons. And the important thing to note here is that women have left the workplace in droves. Black and Hispanic women in particular have suffered some of the steepest spikes in unemployment since the pandemic began. So essentially, we're running out of workers, and we can't afford to lose the talent that we have. So the L&D tie-in, we know that development is a key driver of retention and performance. Lack of career development is by far one of the most commonly cited reasons employees give for leaving their current company. So we need to continue to enact a targeted learning strategy that addresses these real world issues and provides solutions in an impactful way, which we will discuss today. And then secondly, continuous need for upskilling and reskilling. So by now, we've either seen stats or read the World Economic Forum Future Jobs Report, and we know that 40% of core skills will change in 5 years, and 50% of employees need reskilling to support our business growth. So this signals an enormous opportunity for us in learning and development, as renewing worker skills has become a tactical necessity. So we now have that opportunity to create a true culture of continuous learning to build a more equitable workplace. And then third, societal pressures and employee drive to care about corporate social responsibility. Being with a company that aligns with their values, speaks up about social injustice, backs up their employees in time of need and celebration, like Black History Month or LGBTQ Pride Month, which is happening right now. Inclusion is no longer an optional aspect of workplace culture. It's something employees of all backgrounds are demanding. So how does L&D weave into this picture? Think about the behaviors that are needed to speak up if employees are facing discrimination, or be an ally for underrepresented employees that need support. We're seeing more employees creating these grassroots efforts to drive equity and inclusion from the ground up in our workplaces. The popularity of employee resource groups, for example, in chat. Feel free to share how you work with your employee resource groups to create impactful learning strategies. Think about how we in L&D can leverage the passion and expertise in our ERGs to create additional learning avenues for our employees. And then lastly, our expanding remote and hybrid workforce. I know there's other sessions on this. I just want a quick perspective as it relates to this presentation. I think this has brought to light more inequities and stresses, working moms and dads and caretakers, technology limitations in some households. My generation, I have twins right at home, and I have aging parents to take care of. So we brought colleagues into our homes, looking at our living rooms, and my house is not set up for an anytime Zoom call, which is why I'm here at my office. And we don't shush our kids anymore. We don't take our cat and move our cat out of the Zoom frame anymore. It's really created some endearing connections, I think, for many of us too. What I wanted to point out here is keep in mind that there's a good chunk of our workforce that has never left their workspace. So on Semiconductor, for example, we have over 25,000 employees in manufacturing. We have to be careful about the potential exclusion in the term return to workplace, because some have never left their workplace. So having some sensitivity around that. And then the pivot that L&D has made, right, from ILT, blended, VILT, that's going to remain. I don't see that going away. So how do we ensure fair coverage in terms of reach, accessibility, and learning content that ensures every employee has the opportunity to learn regardless of their workplace situation or location, and to really be aware that online classrooms face both similar and unique challenges as in-person related to inclusion and exclusion, access, equity, power dynamics, and we'll dive into more of that today. So as Charlene said, there's a mentee. So here you can go ahead and log into mentee.com or just grab your phone and you can scan the QR code. If you are answering through the website, the code is 4171693. And answer the question, please. What factor, internal or external, created the biggest shift in your L&D strategy in the past year? This is a open text. So you'll have, I think, about 250 characters there. So let me scroll through here. So we've got some answers coming in. Budget, definitely a limitation as some organizations were facing, right? Reduction in force and having to cut back on internal spend. And so L&D teams were having to pivot to limited resources. And how do you get that impact with in a limited resource? Oh, there we go. Another prioritizing budget. Societal pressures that goes with our ERGs as well. Pandemic issues related to leadership changes. So maybe your company pivoted as a whole, brought in a new leadership team or shifted their strategy. A lot around that. Changing customer needs, exactly. What is the customer looking for now? And that's a shift, right? If that hasn't been a true focus for L&D before. So appreciate the responses. Let's see, I have to pivot to see fully remote. Yes, the remote environment has been a huge opportunity for L&D to pivot. So thank you for your answers. I appreciate all of that. And sorry, one point here, an organization's learning culture is continuously evolving. So those moments or themes that I just mentioned and what you answered in that poll, that matters now, that matters today, but who knows what will be next? So being open to flexing and adapting your learning culture is key. So now let's connect the dots and talk about our ideal, inclusive, and equitable learning organization, what that looks like, and then some strategies to get there. Okay, hope this isn't random. I love this quote from the Imperial College in London. Fantastic. So want to take a moment to read that. Scoured the interwebs for this. It has all of the aspects in simple terms, right? Acknowledging that every learner is unique. All of our L&D actions support employees regardless of gender and identity and sexual orientation and location. And background and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There is some real intentionality around creating systems that work for everyone, removing bias and discrimination and ensuring that every employee has a voice, creating that psychological safety and sense of belonging that drives higher levels of performance and engagement. So wanted to share this like as the context of what that looks like in simple terms. And then why are we doing this? I think striving for an inclusive and equitable learning organization, I guarantee that there is still a percentage of the population that's not buying into this and thinks everything's fine the way it is. So I think many of us here in L&D inherently feel in our hearts that this is the right thing to do for our employees, but there are tangible benefits as well that the organization should care about, like engagement and performance, retention and innovation. So I think we can safely say that inclusion drives engagement, which drives performance. And there was a study, ADB study, that revealed employees who are satisfied with their organization's overall commitment to D&I are twice as engaged, noting that these engaged employees work 12% harder, so that's performance, 19% more likely to stay longer with an organization, that's retention, and collaborate 57% more effectively with peers, which really helps with innovation. So sounds great, right? What do we do? What do we do now? So the answer depends on where you are now. So I created a maturity model to help assess your current state and create strategies to reach future state goals and objectives. So this is what I call a diverse, equitable, and inclusive organizational learning maturity model. This is combining, you've probably seen L&D maturity models. I think Burson has one that most people refer to. There's DEI maturity models, which Mercer has a really good one if you're looking. This one is really focused on combining those two. So ideally, and I won't go through all of this, it's just for context and take a look at it, but ideally, DEI is infused across the organization to drive lasting change, and that includes partnership with L&D. So this is about how we can drive that strategic relationship. So these stages reflect increasing business value as you move up the maturity stages. So each stage has strategy, metrics, programs, and then resources as well. So at On Semiconductor, I'd say we're a solid stage 3 with a clear line of sight on stage 4. We have a unified goal that we're striving for as an organization, and that is diversity, equity, and inclusion is embedded in everything we do. That combines really nicely with our L&D goal, which is to bring out the best in our employees by maximizing individual potential. When I started On, we focused on just leadership and professional development, and that was targeted to a small group of leader classifications. And we've come a long way with a goal to support everyone from frontline manufacturing to back office and executives. So delivering learning programs to workers who are typically deskless requires a different strategy. And we know that 1/3 of frontline employees say they aren't getting timely information or continued coaching or training to help them do their job safely and productively. So at On, we do have the mobile apps and QR codes and kiosks. We've kept ILT options. So for our manufacturing sites, because that works better in their environments. So I'll go more into accessibility through technology in a little bit. Just want to know that it is critical for that frontline resonation with executive buy-in. So for example, ERGs with oversight of a DEI council. L&D, we have a learning oversight committee, and they help us govern our own strategy from an executive point of view. The responsibility really should sit with your C-suite leaders because inclusion is not a sole responsibility. It's not one person or one group. So our partnership with the executive team and DEI is critical to our overall success here in the model, and then really providing that true business impact. We have work to do, and we acknowledge that. Culture change at scale takes time and accountability. So every organization just needs to start somewhere. So let's transition into how we drive and facilitate L&D based on the unique preferences and abilities of our diverse workforce. So couple things here I want to note. Equitable and inclusive learning doesn't just happen like magic, boom, it just is there. It comes through purpose and intention. And I will bucket that intentionality into three main areas: design, development, and delivery. I just want to challenge all of us. Check our own assumptions and potential bias as L&D leaders. I don't think any of us are actively trying to create exclusion or inequity in our learning environments or programs, but if it does exist, it's having a negative impact on our learners. So it helps if we go through this process really being curious and humble and self-aware. And then we need to acknowledge addressing the barriers. So recognize those moments of exclusion. And I went through this as well. And solving the barriers that prevent equity. So for L&D, this might look like manager approval to gain entry to your classes, high potential only access, a job role or grade level hierarchy only access to programs, and think about your assessments and testing strategies that might have potential bias. Those are just a few examples, but removing those barriers to inclusion requires all of our actions support employees regardless of their gender and background and role and location and age. So inclusion should benefit everyone. OC Tanner research confirmed that less than half of our organizations offer leadership development opportunities to all employees. So we need to make sure that we're creating a truly inclusive and equitable learning culture. We need to expand how and to whom we offer leadership training to. So at ON, I will say, we did have the pyramid-shaped leadership model with barriers to entry based on your job grade level. We acknowledge that those barriers and turned that model around. It's now called the Leadership Pathways model with the theme Lead from Any Seat, acknowledging that desire and importance of leadership training and education to happen across job grades, roles, departments, regions. So acknowledging barriers and pain points in your learning environment is the first step. Okay, so now into the three areas I spoke about and with intentionality, let's talk about design and development. And no, I'm not going over Addie and Sam and all of those and methodologies. I won't cover what types of DEI learning you should include in your library. I think that's very specific to where you are in your maturity in that way. This is more about making sure that the learning created, whether internal or a third-party vendor, is meaningful and impactful for a variety of your employees. So it starts with the principles of inclusive or universal instructional design methods that apply for everyone. This is a framework, if you haven't heard of it, and go ahead and put in chat. Like, are you using UDL? Have you used a variation of it? Are you aware of it? Go ahead and put that in chat so we can have a talk about it. Love to learn from each other right now too. This is a framework for designing multiple and flexible strategies for learning experiences that are effective for diverse learners. So addressing the needs in a variety of backgrounds and cultures and abilities with key themes, anticipating that learner need and designing the instructional experience, whether it's the method or materials, for multiple scenarios, situation, and needs. And that covers all modalities from VILT to mixed reality. And I think what's interesting is the heart of this is human-centered design. Going back to, do you know your learners? And I'm a promoter of learner personas. That analysis and understanding the unique day-to-day environments and challenges of our employees, how do they access learning resources? How are they solving real problems? How do they get better at their jobs, right? Ask the questions, observe behavior. The importance of learner personas. Okay, does anyone remember WIFM, the what's in it for me? WIFM is the first thing I learned in training back in 2003. And it was like, why does this training matter to the learner? And from their unique lens, I think there's a rebranding of WIFM, or I would like to rebrand WIFM to purpose. So help learners find their purpose. When people can tie their learning to a bigger purpose, they'll be more engaged in the experience, more motivated to keep the learning going. So this is about making sure the learning is applicable to the learner regardless of their situation, making it clear how they'll use this knowledge in their roles back on the job and making that connection through social and emotional tie-ins. We don't have time for mentee, y'all. I am like just talking. So in chat, if you want to put in chat, if you are using learner personas, right? I think that would be the good chat that I had planned for mentee. We'll keep rolling, but please feel free to discuss in chat. I love that as well. So learner personas will help you meet the learner where they are and guide some key attributes of your learning like regional and local needs. So at onsemi, we actually created a standard operating procedure around language and translation requirements specific to training and making sure that there's a consistent practice around translations in our core languages. The barriers oftentimes, right? Budget. So we are testing a new to us technology to bring localization in-house through SmartCat. And there's other cloud-based translation and localization platforms, but be conscious of the situations, faces, cultures depicted through your learning experience, and then use the images that really portray your diverse employees in authentic work environments. And that includes the names of the people in your scenarios and things like that. Be aware of neurodiversity. So sometimes people refer to this as invisible diversity, which represents neurocognitive differences like autism, ADHD, Tourette syndrome. The main point here is to make sure that learners feel safe to disclose their specific needs if they want to, and that your learning is available in a variety of modalities to meet their needs. Other considerations to keep in mind: closed caption, transcripts, your pace and pause, interactive elements, many more. But just be intentional also about the social element. So part of your design that includes support for practice, reflection, application, providing a sense of belonging amid desire for individuality is key. So mentorship, coaching, and sponsorship, I think we know that sponsorship aids in the career advancement of underrepresented employees. So we've created a learning journey for our Black employee network, where part of the journey towards the end is a sponsorship opportunity by an internal leader. And we added formal mentorship into our women's leadership programs as well. Think about learning cohorts and knowledge sharing opportunities. If you do knowledge sharing, train your subject matter experts on how to share knowledge. We've done that, train the trainer in place for our SMEs, which has been really helpful and beneficial. Now what about the delivery, right? We've designed it with inclusion in mind. We need to think about diverse delivery methods. So we did touch on formalized learning avenues, but I do want to point out not to discount informal social learning, which should be encouraged through communities of practice, peer-to-peer coaching, performance support. So I'm running out of time, and I do want to make sure there's time for questions. So I'll do this a little bit quicker. ILT, VLT, make the most of those learning moments, y'all. When people are actually together in a synchronous learning event, think about how to maximize their time through flipped classroom and performance-based learning methodology. Online, give learners space for self-directed learning and access to a breadth of content to help them find what inspires them. This is about accessibility, which really brings us to technology. And there's a million tools: LMS, LXP, digital adoption platforms, AR, VR, MR, chatbots, gamification. Just think about that. I mean, at On and like most organizations, our employees can access their learning anytime, anywhere, on any device. We recently implemented MS Teams to our company to roll out the cohorts and social aspect that we talk about. Just make sure, even if you enjoy technology, or your employees do, they may resist if it disrupts their flow of work. So simplicity is key. Every day, the average worker uses 11 different technological systems to do their job. So be cognizant of that. So don't let technology get in the way. That's the main point I wanted to make there. And then manager engagement. So we know that a strong manager who's engaged in their employees' learning drives engagement and retention. At On, all of our Asia, L&D, and OD regional leaders are certified coaches. That helps our managers and leaders embrace a coaching mindset, encourages them to create time for conversation around capabilities, career interests, and learning resources. So I'll get to my last slide here. So conduct a learning audit. And I would say, so the key takeaways with that, the learning audit is really going to help you examine those key levers associated with equity and inclusion in your L&D systems and practices. This is where the journey starts with an assessment and many conversations. And then from there, look for inconsistencies from the audit and bridge the gaps. Get out into the trenches and talk to people, managers, ask questions and observe. Include diverse perspectives in your design, development, and delivery. And just, we all have to start somewhere. So get some small wins under your belt. We can't tackle everything at once. Experiment and trial. Make sure you have continuous open feedback loops and be curious, open and adaptable. So hopefully this was helpful in giving some ideas on how to start working towards an equitable and inclusive learning environment. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. And Charlene, I'm open. I think we have a few minutes left if there's any questions.
We do. You did leave some wonderful time there, Elizabeth. Thank you. So let's jump right in. What are some of the hurdles you faced in working towards creating an equitable and inclusive learning environment?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say, depending on your organization, be prepared that hurdles will happen. So for us, I think it was really about trying to do too much. So we got in our own way at first, setting too many tactics. And trust me, once you do that audit and scan for exclusion and inequities, you will want to tackle everything right away. So take a step back and be more intentional about the strategies to provide that impact.
I could only imagine, right? You're like, oh, this, like, it's like all these ideas.
So much.
And I love that you just reiterated, like, we have to start somewhere. So I love that. We almost need to tell ourselves that on a daily basis so that we can really refocus. Let me squeeze in one more question, Elizabeth, and that is, what are some resources that you've used to help create your strategy?
So there's a lot to unpack here. So I specifically targeted resources that I felt important. So to me, we need to be aware of these things. And interesting to point out, I think I made a little comment about it. When you search this on the internet, it'll be about classrooms, colleges often. So I would say first, become knowledgeable yourself on unconscious and implicit bias, equity, and allyship. VILT Best Practices, a fantastic site from the University of Berkeley on the D&I department, has a great resource there. Universal Instructional Design, look at the guidelines and methodology. Design Destination Facilitation is an ATD book, a travel guide to training around the world. Fantastic to understand more about the cultural preferences of different regions. I would say just also scour LinkedIn, podcasts, and follow people that are experts in this and keep reading up on it because it is a very impactful and important topic for all of us.
Absolutely. Perfect. And we ended right on time. And we actually still have some comments coming in. So I want to encourage everyone at home, keep typing and sharing, right? That's exactly what Elizabeth was hoping for, that you guys would get together, answer those questions, keep the conversation going. So Elizabeth, just wonderful points here and insights and just some really good reminders how to refocus, recenter. And I think that's really important now more than ever. So thank you so much for joining us. And thank you for speaking today, Elizabeth. And with that, I wish you a great rest of your day. And I'm going to get ready for our next panel discussion to come up. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.